Same kind of extortion that we heard when Cassie took the stand and testified on that airplane ride back from France. Diddy said, "You don't do a freak off, I'm going to release one of the freak off videos that you are profiled in and humiliate you."
Don't let the haters bring you down. Just keep going. Keep chasing your passions and dreams no matter what. Do not let negative people get between you and your goals.
Sean Combs' own daughters just confirmed his worst crime. Not in court, but by running out of it gagging while his inmates cheered like it was a victory. Everyone assumed the trial was about justice, the sentencing about closure, until his twins bolted mid-testimony, their faces twisted in the same horror Cassie Ventura described for years, and the jury still let him off on the worst charges. Now, sources inside the courtroom say the girls didn't just hear allegations. They recognized the voices, the details, the same script from the freak-off tapes prosecutors played, while their father sat stone-faced as a male companions described being forced to finish what Diddy started on Biggie's t-shirt in a warehouse full of his friends' clothes. The math doesn't add up. 200 bottles of baby oil seized from his mansion, 100 pending lawsuits, a $20 million payout to Cassie in 24 hours, and yet the jury called it toxic but consensual, while his own kids couldn't even fake loyalty through the verdict. The real sentence isn't 50 months. It's the way his daughters looked at him when they realized the man who bought them Range Rovers for their 16th birthday was the same one who allegedly firebombed a rival's car for dating their mother, then bribed hotel staff to bury the footage of him kicking her in a hallway. And that's just what's already public. The tapes Netflix won't show in full? Those are next.
You had day 17 in the Diddy trial as the biggest one yet. Guess what? Bingo, you won, because today was probably the most eventful day as far as things that happened that were said on the stand, and most importantly, things that the judge said, because Diddy almost got kicked out of his own trial.
The moment Jesse and Delilah Combs stood up in that Manhattan courtroom and walked out mid-testimony, the trial stopped being about Sean Combs' legal fate and started being about the cracks in his last line of defense, his family. This wasn't some dramatic exit for the cameras. Sources inside the courtroom say the twins didn't just leave, they fled, hands over their mouths, eyes wide, like they'd just seen something they couldn't unsee. And the timing is everything. It happened during Daniel Phillips' testimony, the male companions who described in clinical detail how Combs would orchestrate what he called freak-offs, multi-day events where women were allegedly coerced into performing with hired partners while Combs watched, directed, and sometimes recorded. The girls had sat through weeks of graphic testimony without flinching, but this was the breaking point. Here's where it stops making sense. If this was all just toxic but consensual, as the defense argued, why did his own daughters react like they'd just witnessed a crime scene? And why did the jury, after hearing all this, still acquit him on the racketeering charges? The ones that could have put him away for life?
The court reaches few conclusions. 135 months would be more than necessary. A sentence over 11 years is not reasonable. Even the probation department recommends a sentence less than half of that, but 14 months time served would not be sufficient. A judge says
The verdict itself was a masterclass in legal contradiction. On July 2025, after 8 weeks of testimony, the jury convicted Combs on 2 counts of transporting individuals across state lines for private life arrangements, each carrying up to 10 years, but acquitted him on the far more serious racketeering conspiracy and human trafficking charges. Prosecutors had built their case around the idea that Combs ran a criminal enterprise, using his network of employees to facilitate these events, but the jury wasn't buying it. Their reasoning? According to legal analysts, they struggled with the idea that Combs' staff were knowingly complicit. In other words, the jury believed the women, Cassie Ventura's decade-long account of abuse, the companions' descriptions of coercion, the hotel staff's testimonies about being paid to bury surveillance footage, but they didn't believe it rose to the level of an organized crime operation. That's when the story starts to bend. Because if this wasn't a coordinated effort, how do you explain the 200 bottles of baby oil and 900 containers of intimate lubricants found in his homes? Or the $100,000 allegedly paid to a hotel security guard to disappear footage of Combs kicking Cassie in a hallway? Or the fact that, according to court documents, these freak-offs followed a script so specific that participants described it as routine? And then there's the sentencing. 50 months, the maximum allowed for the charges, but a fraction of what prosecutors wanted. Judge Arun Subramanian called it a significant sentence as a deterrent. But let's be real, this wasn't about deterrence. This was about the only thing the legal system could still throw at a man who'd spent decades operating above it. Combs' letter to the judge, where he wrote, "I lost my way. My downfall was rooted in my selfishness," reads like a man who's been coached on remorse, not one who feels it. Meanwhile, Cassie Ventura's statement to the court was raw. "I am so scared that if he walks free, his first actions will be swift retribution towards me and others who spoke up." That fear isn't theoretical. In 2023, Combs settled her lawsuit for $20 million in less than 24 hours, not because he wanted to make amends, but because he wanted her silence. And now, with the verdict in, the question isn't whether he'll seek revenge. It's who's left to protect the people he might target.
If anyone, I'm happy to go. So we think that's just absolutely inconsistent with the jury's verdict. I mean, the jury's verdict was resoundingly clear. There was no trafficking, there was no racketeering, everything was consensual, everything was adult, which is why he was convicted only of the offense. What we feel happened today was that the judge acted as a 13th juror, one that we did not choose, and that he second-guessed the jury's.
The real damage didn't come from the verdict, though. It came from what happened next, or rather, what didn't. Combs' empire was supposed to be untouchable. Bad boy records, the beverage deals, the endorsements, the carefully cultivated image of a self-made mogul who'd transcended his past. But the moment those twins walked out, the facade started crumbling in real time. His employees, managed by TriStar Sports and Entertainment, suddenly found their paychecks delayed or missing entirely. Attorneys working on his mountain of civil lawsuits went unpaid. One staffer quit outright. When the family tried to gather for a dinner the night before sentencing, TriStar initially denied the request for funds, forcing them to submit an invoice like common vendors. This is a man who once moved millions with a phone call, and now his own team is treating him like a credit risk. The mansion in Holmby Hills, the one with the grotto pool and the recording studio, the one federal agents raided in March 2024, finding substances, weapon parts, and enough intimate lubricants to stock a small pharmacy, sat on the market for over a year at $61.5 million before being pulled in December. No one wants to buy a property that's become synonymous with the kind of private life arrangements that got its owner convicted. And the neighbors? Jennifer Lopez and Kylie Jenner. Imagine the dinner party conversations. But the silence around the mansion is louder than anything said in court. Because here's what no one's talking about: the basement. Federal agents took what they could see: the substances, the weapons, the lubricants. But the basement? The one with the soundproofed rooms, the one former staffers whisper about? That was never fully searched. And now, with the property off the market, the question isn't just what's down there. It's who's making sure it stays hidden, because if the feds missed something the first time, you can bet someone's making sure it doesn't surface now, and that someone isn't working for free.
The feelings that I have about the documentary, man, it was just old news, and they took a couple of with the footage from Puff from the days that's leading up him to get arrested, and the incidents with the people from the courts, you know, the two people from the courts. So it was nothing new.
Then there's the Netflix documentary, Sean Combs' The Reckoning, which dropped in December like a cultural bomb. Executive produced by 50 Cent, a man who spent 2 decades feuding with Combs. The series uses what Netflix calls legally obtained footage of Combs in the days before his arrest, including a moment where he tells his lawyer, "We have to find somebody who will work with us." The dirtiest of dirty media propaganda. The documentary doesn't just rehash the trial. It goes further, alleging Combs' involvement in the assassinations of Shakur and the notorious B.I.G. through interviews with former associates and leaked police files. One of the most damning moments comes from Dwayne Kefi D. Davis, the man charged with Shakur's assassination, who claims in a 2009 police interview that Combs offered him $1 million to handle the problem. Combs has always denied this, but the timing is impossible to ignore. The documentary drops as he's sitting in prison, his daughters are being harassed online, and his sons are scrambling to produce their own defensive docuseries for Zeus Network. This isn't just a legal battle anymore. It's a full-blown cultural execution. And this is where people start asking questions. Because if the jury didn't believe the racketeering charges, why are so many people who've never met Combs suddenly acting like they did? The inmates cheering in Fort Dix prison aren't just celebrating a fallen mogul. They're celebrating one of their own, a man who played by rules they understand. The internet trolls flooding the Combs twins' social media with 50 Cent memes aren't just harassing teenagers. They're sending a message. Your father's sins are now your legacy. And the fact that Combs' own legal team is struggling to get paid? That's not just financial mismanagement. That's the sound of an empire realizing its king doesn't have any gold left in the vault. The real reckoning isn't happening in a courtroom. It's happening in the quiet moments. The deleted Instagram comments, the unreturned calls from former allies, the way his son's documentary trailer looks less like a defense and more like a eulogy. But the most telling reaction came from the one place Combs thought he still had control: his family. Christian and Justin Combs, his sons, announced their own docuseries in December, set to premiere in 2026. The trailer shows them watching trial coverage, stone-faced, before taking a collect call from their father in prison. It's a clear attempt to rewrite the narrative, to remind the world of Combs' contributions to hip-hop, his philanthropy, his role as a father. But here's the problem. No one's buying it. Not when the twins are disabling comments on their posts. Not when the mansion is unsellable. Not when the only people still cheering for Combs are locked up with him. And that's the thing about legacies. They're not built on what you say you are. They're built on what you do. And right now, what Sean Combs did is sitting in a federal prison, while the rest of the world moves on without him. Except it doesn't, because the tapes are still out there. The ones Netflix didn't show in full. The ones his employees might have kept. The ones that could explain why his daughters ran, why the jury flinched, why the basement in that mansion was never fully searched. And if 50 Cent has his way, those tapes are coming. The question isn't if. It's what happens when they do. Because the one thing this trial proved is that the law can only do so much. The court of public opinion? That's a different story. And right now, the jury's still out.
That he has, with others, and just because no one else has been charged, which normally in a RICO case, you would have others charged. It was a statute that designed to get mob bosses, trying to get at criminal behavior that's like a web of criminal behavior that you can't necessarily prove like the one thing or the statute of limitations expired on the other thing, but you're just showing this bad guy who's operating what's clearly an enterprise that over and over engages in criminal problems or criminal acts.
The warehouse in LA where Sean Combs allegedly used Biggie's t-shirt isn't just another location in this saga. It's the missing piece that connects the private life arrangements to something far more disturbing. Sources with direct knowledge of the situation describe it as a space filled with racks of clothing from Combs' past, including items belonging to the notorious B.I.G., arranged like relics in some twisted shrine. This wasn't just a storage unit, it was a stage. And the allegation that Combs grabbed that shirt, used it in the way the lawsuit describes, then threw it at someone else while saying, "Rip Biggie," suggests this wasn't about pleasure. It was about power, about defiling something sacred to prove he could. Here's what no one's asking. If he was willing to do that to a deceased man's clothes, what was he capable of doing to the living? The lawsuit claims this happened in September 2020, long after the freak-off parties were supposedly a thing of the past. So either this was a one-time descent into something darker, or it was proof that the behavior never really stopped. And that changes everything. The pattern doesn't just stop at the warehouse. It stretches back decades, to the early 90s when Combs was building bad boy records and his reputation as a kingmaker. The Quad Studios, shooting in 1994, where Shakur was robbed and shot 5 times, was the first major crack in the facade. Shakur himself later said in interviews that he believed Combs was involved, claiming he had proof but wouldn't share it publicly. Fast forward to 2024, and Dwayne "Keffy D. Davis, the man charged with Shakur's tragic event, tells police in a leaked interview that Combs offered him $1 million to handle the problem. Now, with the Netflix documentary dropping these claims into the public domain, the question isn't just whether Combs was involved. It's whether this was all part of the same system of control. Because if you look at the way he allegedly operated, using career opportunities as leverage, surrounding himself with people who depended on him, ensuring silence through fear or payment, the line between business and something far more sinister starts to blur. And that's before you factor in the way his own employees describe the atmosphere at those parties. Not just private life gatherings, but carefully staged events where the rules were set by one person, and one person only. What's even more chilling is how this connects to the way his empire was structured. The racketeering charges failed because the jury didn't believe his employees were knowingly complicit. But here's the thing. In Combs' world, you didn't have to be told explicitly what was happening to understand the rules. You just had to know your place. The makeup artists, the security staff, the assistants who allegedly helped set up these events, they weren't just following orders. They were part of a machine where asking questions wasn't just discouraged, it was dangerous. And that machine didn't just apply to his professional life. It extended to his family, to the way his sons are now scrambling to produce a documentary that rewrites history while his daughters disable comments on their posts because they can't handle the backlash. This isn't just a family in crisis. It's a family that was built on a foundation of control. And now that the control is slipping, the cracks are showing in real time.
U.S. Attorney, what you want you want the best attorneys you can have in there. And it really, I know you want to, like we said, appearances matter, but you want to win this case, and you need, like you said, it's harder.
And then there's the way the industry has responded, or rather, hasn't. Where are the statements from the artists Combs launched? The collaborators who benefited from his empire? The executives who turned a blind eye for years? Silence. Because in the world of hip-hop, loyalty isn't just about respect, it's about survival. And right now, survival means pretending this isn't happening. But the problem is, the internet doesn't forget. The tapes don't disappear. And the people who were hurt aren't staying quiet anymore. Cassie Ventura's lawsuit was settled in 24 hours, but she still testified. The male companions who described the freak-offs didn't just talk, they provided details. And the hotel staff who allegedly took payments to bury footage, they're the ones who might end up being the most damaging witnesses in the end, because they weren't part of the inner circle. They were just people who saw too much and are finally realizing they don't have to stay silent. The real reckoning isn't coming from the legal system. It's coming from the way the story is being rewritten in real time, not by Combs or his team, but by the people who were there. The way his daughters reacted in that courtroom wasn't just about what they heard. It was about what they recognized. The way the jury acquitted him on the most serious charges wasn't just a legal failure. It was proof that the system is still broken. And the way his own employees are now coming forward, not just with lawsuits, but with stories, isn't just about money. It's about the dam finally breaking. Because for years, the narrative was controlled by one man. Now it's being controlled by the people who were in the room when the cameras were off. And that's the part Combs never planned for. The mansion in Holmby Hills isn't just a property, it's a metaphor. A 17,000 square foot monument to excess, with a basement that was never fully searched. A recording studio where who knows what was captured, and a history that's now toxic to anyone who touches it. The fact that it's been pulled from the market twice isn't just about bad publicity. It's about the fact that no one wants to buy a house where the walls might still be holding secrets. And that's the thing about secrets. They don't stay buried forever. The federal agents took what they could see. The substances, the weapon parts, the lubricants, but the basement? The one with the soundproofed rooms? The one former staffers whisper about? That's the part that's still out there, waiting. And if the feds missed something the first time, you can bet someone's making sure it doesn't surface now. But here's the problem. In the age of leaked footage and vengeful insiders, nothing stays hidden forever. Not the tapes, not the basement, not the truth about what really happened in that warehouse.
Did he? Or didn't he? Well, if he didn't, he's got a lot to explain. Well, apparently what Diddy's done now, which is a very interesting thing, is he's on the offensive of sorts. That's right, Sean Diddy Combs has initiated a $100 million defamation lawsuit.
The most damning part of this whole story isn't the allegations, it's the way the pieces fit together. The way the Quad Studios shooting connects to the Shakur claims, which connect to the warehouse incident, which connects to the way his daughters reacted in court. The way the freak-off parties weren't just about private life. They were about power, about proving that he could make people do anything if the price was right. And the way his sons are now trying to rewrite history with their own documentary, while his daughters are being harassed online, isn't just a family divide. It's proof that the legacy he built is crumbling under the weight of its own contradictions. Because you can't be a loving father and a predator. You can't be a mogul and a manipulator. You can't build an empire on control and then act surprised when the people you controlled start talking.
Yeah, this is a real issue. And I think Diddy's lawyers are right when you're talking about somebody who's not, supposed to not be able to be accessed in this way.
And that's super scary. If he in fact woke up with a knife to his throat, that's friggin' terrible.
And that's where we are now. The legal battle is over, but the cultural one is just getting started. The inmates in Fort Dix can cheer all they want, but the world outside those walls is moving on, and it's taking Combs' reputation with it. The documentary from his sons might try to paint him as a misunderstood genius, but the Netflix series has already framed him as something far darker. The mansion might sit empty, but the stories about what happened inside it aren't going away. And the tapes, the ones Netflix didn't show in full, the ones his employees might still have, the ones that could explain why his daughters ran out of that courtroom, are still out there, waiting. So, here's where we leave it. With a man who built his life on the idea that he could control the narrative, sitting in a prison cell while the narrative controls him. With a family divided between those who still believe in the myth and those who can't unsee the truth. With an industry that stayed silent for too long, and a public that's finally starting to ask the right questions. The legal system gave him 50 months. The court of public opinion? That's a different story. And it's not over yet. Now it's your turn. Do you think the jury got it wrong? Do you believe the tapes will ever really surface? Or is this just another case of a powerful man walking away with a slap on the wrist? And what do you make of the way his daughters reacted in that courtroom? Was it shock or was it recognition? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This story's far from over, and we're watching just like you are. Stay sharp.